you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Lore by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the masquerade. In this episode, we are going to go through everything you need to know in order to create your own true Black Hand member and playable Elder Methuselah and Ancilla characters in Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition, or V20 as the Seraphims call it these days. Before we properly sink our teeth into tonight's episode, I wish to tell you what you will need in order to follow along with me to make your first playable member of the Tal'Mahe'Ra in V20. First and foremost, you will need a copy of the Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition core book, either as a physical or a PDF copy if you are a weirdo or allergic to books or something. If you are playing the game old school with the archaic devices known as pen and paper, you may have a friend, or two, who is willing to lend you their copy. But as more and more fledglings are seeking the likes of Discord and Roll20 to play, it is highly unlikely someone will just lend you a book from afar. In addition, you will need the V20 sourcebook, The Black Hand, a guide to the Tal'Mahe'Ra, as that not only contains everything you need about the true Black Hand, but it also contains some unique disciplines, merits, flaws, and backgrounds to apply to your true Black Hand character. It also details the sensible amount of points for attributes, skills, and disciplines for Ancilla, Elders, and Methuselah characters, which I shall be referring to as Seraphims in this episode. The easiest place you can buy both books and other supplement source books you fancy is through drivethrurpg.com. I am going to presume that if you are here, you know a fair amount of Vampire the Masquerade and have a basic understanding of how some, if not all, the clan mechanics work. You may have seen some online chronicles such as LA by Night by Geek and Sundry, now on the World of Darkness Twitch channel, Chicago by Night by Near Dark Studios, and Savage City by Caffeinated Conquests, or played Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which led you here, or other online chronicles which in turn led you here anyway. So I won't go too in depth with the clan lores for now. Instead, I will give a very brief overview of the playable clans in V20. The Assamites, who have recently adopted the term Banu Hakim, are silent virtuosos in assassination who collect blood to bring them closer to their maker. The Bruja, or Bruja, were once philosopher monarchs of an ancient civilization, but are now deadbeat rebels. The Ministry, once known as the followers of Set, adopt the idea that Set, the Egyptian god of the underworld, is their maker, and do what they can to manipulate those around them, whilst protecting their own strange artifacts. The Gangrel resemble the beasts associated with vampires more than any other clan. The Giovanni is a strange, insular family who embrace only within their own. They practice necromancy whilst dictating global finances, something that they have been doing since the Renaissance. The La Sombra are inhumane nobles who are able to manipulate the shadows and darkness around them. Clan Malkavian are broken by madness, each one ranging from unhinged to batshit crazy. The Nosferatu are hideously disfigured upon their embrace, so they hide in the sewers away from kine eyes. If you want to find out something, go and speak to one of them, as they hoard secrets. The Ravnos are described as gypsies by other kindred, but there is more to them than that, I assure you. They are powerful tricksters who can force the mind to see what really isn't there. The Toreadors enjoy every sensual pleasure that unlife has to offer them. They appear to like pretty fiends, but it is all terribly forced to make them seem as human as possible. The Tremere became vampires through treachery and trickery, wielding supernatural blood magic and impressive knowledge. The Tzimisce distance themselves from mortality as much as possible, for they are old world lords of eldritch horror, as they are able to manipulate flesh and bone as if it was some grotesque putty. And finally, through their self-imposed entitlement and greed, the Venture are often the iron fist that rules a given city, imposing their own wills and traditions onto kindred society. V20 also offers players to embrace the role of clan variants such as the country Gangrel. All of the clan anti-tributes are available as well, in addition to the 13 bloodlines such as the Noread, Cappadocians, and True Bruja, all of which have been explored in previous episodes. That being said, not all the clans may be invited to join the Tal'Mahe'Ra, which I will discuss momentarily. Once you have the core book and any other source books you want, you will need a character sheet. Drive-Thru-RPG doesn't easily provide PDF copies, so you'll have to look elsewhere to find an interactive PDF character sheet. For this episode, I will be using the mrgon.rocksolidshells.com interactive sheet, but there are others available, should you wish to use a different format. It should be noted, you cannot use the V5 character sheet when creating your V20 vampire, for reasons we will soon explore. With that preparation shenanigans biting the dust, one can now begin to create their V20 Tal'Mahe'Ra character. There is no system or dice roll to be made when determining your character's clan, unless you really want to, of course. You can choose whichever clan you want to roleplay in your story. Vampire the Masquerade uses the storyteller system, which encourages players to become one with their character, to embrace them, as it were. The kindred of the world of darkness, the universe in which Vampire the Masquerade exists, usually do not embrace mortals willy-nilly, meaning that there was a reason as to why you were embraced by your sire. What sort of person were they in life? Where did they go? How did they go about doing it? Where and when were they embraced? These are just some of the questions that should come to mind when building your character, as it is their life as Kain, the human, that will determine the stats and concepts. Once you have answered those questions, there are some additional pieces of information that need to be considered. Due to their long rivalry, the followers of Set are forbidden from joining the Tal'Mahe'Ra. Similarly, Clan Tzimisce and the city Gangrel are not allowed to join. Old Clan Tzimisce are one of the founding clans. Clans Bruja, Giovanni, La Sombra, and Tremere are highly looked down upon in the True Black Hand because of their history of diablerie and have to work twice as hard to earn trust and respect. Neonates less than 50 years old are not able to join, in addition to the thin-blooded. As the Tal'Mahe'Ra focuses on age, experience, and power, ask yourself what your character has been doing since they have been embraced. What drew your attention to the True Black Hand? What qualified your membership? What are your activities and ties with the Tal'Mahe'Ra? What are your goals and motivations? The True Black Hand is filled with worships galore, so what are your beliefs? This should consider their path of enlightenment and any cults they may be tied to, although that last part isn't always necessary. If the clan limitations and Tal'Mahe'Ra lore is overwhelming to you at this point, I suggest listening to the previous episode, which provides a crash course on the sect. With all those juicy questions answered, we can turn to your character sheet. Starting at the top of the page, you should be able to fill most of these by yourself. Name is obviously your character's name, be it their actual name or a pseudonym. Player is obviously you, and if you have problems with that, I suggest you go back to school pretty quickly. Chronicle is the name of the story you're playing in, such as London by Night, New York by Night, Join the Law by Night, Discord server by night, just a couple of ideas for you. Concept is your character notions. For example, Tremere Stage Magician, Nosferatu Hacker, or Ventru CEO. These examples I gave are stereotypes for those clans, but there is nothing stopping you wanting to be a Bruja journalist or a Toreador kickboxer. In many ways, these two weirder examples fit the archetypes rather nicely, providing you use a bit of imagination. Clan is whatever you are in, including the clan as Kaitiv. For the benefit of those coming from Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, in V20, Thin Bloods are a purchasable flaw at character creation, but they are not allowed for Tal'Mahe'Ra characters anyway, so take that what you will. Generation is how far or close your vampiric blood is to the mythic progenitor Cain. Vampires are one generation weaker than their sire, so if your sire was generation 11 and Ancilla, you would be generation 12, a neonate or fledgling depending on when and where you embraced. In V20, you can play as any generation other than antediluvian and lower. Whereas most sessions encourage players to be neonates, no kindred higher than generation 10 may join the Tal'Mahe'Ra. Finally, there is your sire. Your character may not have known their sire, but this piece of information, or lack of thereof, helps to build your character's backstory. If your character is sireless, think how your character has survived on their own up until the first session, and how they have wriggled their way into the True Black Hand. However, those using the Mr. Gon interactive sheet will notice the Kamut box in place of sire. It is like a temporary Sabbat pack with different terminology to clearly distinguish it from the ordinary Sabbat packs that Black Hand operatives are also a part of. A permanent Kamut also can be called column, but in less terms, this is essentially your coterie. As for my example character, Claude Lorraine was a lowly thief in medieval France during his mortal life, who would eventually run out of luck, being caught stealing a nobleman's house of fine cutlery. Claude was beaten black and blue, stabbed, and had his nose split in the process. Bleeding out, almost at heaven's door, he was approached by his sire, offering him a way out, a restart on life. He would be embraced into Clan Cappadocian and would spend the next 200 years working his way up Canaanite society, seeking the answers to life and death, eventually becoming Seneschal to the Canaanite Prince of France, despite his mortal transgressions and the split nose. Then came the day where he and the rest of his clan was summoned to Keimalki and was made to answer Cappadocius's many questions, all of which he deemed to have answered correctly. However, even after some 200 years of servitude to the clan, Claude's ability to read and write was not as strong as some of the others and was deemed a traitor, being locked within the city. Naturally livid and angry, Claude would forego his former clan name, becoming one of the many harbingers of skulls that would travel through the Shroud with the aid of the Capuchin. Claude would continue pursuing the answers to life and death with a true black hand, gaining much respect once more from his fellow Lazarines in his understanding in necromancy, and a strong relationship with Lazarus himself. If you have filled out your sheet correctly, there should be 2 boxes left for you to fill out. Nature and demeanor are very similar in definition, but are very different in how one would use them, for they define your character and how they interact with the world. Demeanor is how you choose to present your character to the world, whilst nature is how they truly are inside. To use an extremely crass example, you may seem like the nicest person in the world in the public eye, but deep down inside, you are a deranged psychopath who eats kittens for lunch, always complaining that there is never enough salt. But going back to the character creation process, both nature and demeanor splinter off into many archetypes, each one providing different ways for players to regain willpower, a finite resource a player may use when in a sticky situation, or to resist entering frenzy given the right circumstances. There are lots to choose from, so I will let you discover those for yourself. But to add this new information to Claude, he is a scholar of life, death, and everything else in between. That has been his purpose in Unlife for over 600 years at this point. He knows little else by this point. There are puzzles that need to be solved and harnessed, which is why I'm going to assign him the Scientist Demeanor. He would regain a willpower point whenever a logical, symmetrical approach to a problem is solved or information gathered logically is of use to another in a similar situation. As for his nature, that is a lot harder to truly define. Now, one could argue that his split nose, the agonizing pain of being stabbed, being beaten black and blue as a mortal, was the last things he felt as a human, and has a constant reminder of his former mortal life, which may push him to do better in all fields, similarly to the torturous experience during the Feast of Folly. His pains and sufferings have made him stronger, and will continue to make him stronger, a mindset I can't see him sharing with anyone else. With this macabre thinking, I shall assign Claude the masochist nature, which allows him to regain a willpower point when his own suffering leads to some tangible gain for him, and 2 if that pain is gained in a truly unique way. Now that you have established some lore regarding your character, you should have an idea what sort of person they are when you assign points into your attributes. How do they solve their problems? Fighting? Thinking, or talking? How do they naturally interact with the world? The attributes section is made up of 3 categories: physical, mental, and social. You start by assigning 1 point in all the attributes, but the distribution of points is dependent on generation. If you are creating a neonate character, the process is exactly the same for standard character creation, so refer to the V20 core book or my episode on V20 character creation for guidance. The number of points you assign for any older generation changes from generation to generation. Ancilla, which is considered for this generations 8 to 10, you put 8 points in one, 6 in the other, and 4 in the final one. Elders, which is generation 8 to 6, 10 points in one, 7 in the other, and 5 in the last one. And with Seraphims or Methuselahs, which are generations 4 to 6, you put 12 points in one, 8 in the other, and 6 in the last one. If you decide to put 4 points in a particular attribute, which is very likely, you can choose to assign a specialty to it. However, some of the more grotesque looking clans, such as the Nosferatu and Gargoyle, have no points in appearance and can never increase it. As stated previously, Claude is a scholar, focusing the majority of his attention in these modern knights on his studies. Given when he was embraced, it would be fair to assume that he is a Seraphim, a Methuselah. In a previous Canaanite life, he was a seneschal, meaning that he would have been fairly apt at negotiations and social gatherings. And don't forget that he was a thief as a mortal, so he would be rather dexterous and alert, more so than others of his clan. The Harbingers of Skulls is one of the aforementioned ugly clans, so his appearance is stuck at 0. So it is fair to assume that the mental is the primary attribute, social is the secondary attribute, and physical is the tertiary group. In the mental attributes, I have put 5 points in perception, 4 points in intelligence, and 6 points in wits. In the social attribute, I have put 4 points in charisma and 6 points in manipulation, and in the physical attribute, I have put 2 points in strength, 4 points in dexterity, and 3 points in stamina. Dice rolls in Vampire the Masquerade are usually made up of one attribute plus an ability, as there are many ways of demonstrating feats of strength and intelligence, unless you're wanting to deadlift a donkey, for example, as that would be pure strength by my reckoning. The abilities are divided up into, from left to right, talents, skills, and knowledges. Similarly to attributes, abilities are prioritized in primary, secondary, and tertiary groups, with no skill getting more than 3 points at this point. No ability can get more than 3 points at this point. Again, if you are making a neonate character, refer to the main V20 core book or the Lore by Night podcast episode on standard V20 character creation. As for the other generations, the Ancilla, generations 8 to 10, have 14, 10 and 7 points to spend in the correct places. Elders, which are generations 8 to 6, have 17, 13 and 10 points to spend in the correct places, and Seraphim or Methuselah characters, generations 4 to 6, have 20, 16 and 13 points to spend in the correct places. If you put any points into crafts, performance or technology, you have to assign a specialty to it, which would add 1 dice to any roll where said specialty would apply. For example, if your character was an iPad expert and was attempting to repair their ghoul's iPad, you would gain an additional dice when repairing it. The distribution of Claude's ability points will reflect his high standard as an appointment right hand to the Canaanite prince in Paris, his knowledge on the occult, and his abilities in larceny and brawl during his lifestyle as a thief. As a mortal. So there's quite a lot of points to get through now, but in the talent section I have given him 3 points in alertness, 2 points in athletics, 3 points in awareness, 1 point in brawl, 3 points in expression, 3 points in leadership, 2 points in streetwise, and 1 point in subterfuge. In the skills section I have given him 2 points in drive, 3 points in etiquette, 3 points in larceny, 2 points in melee, 3 points in stealth, and 3 points in survival, and I've given him a specialty in horses in drive for the shits and giggles factor. And in knowledges, I have given him 1 point in academics, 3 points in investigation, 1 point on law, 2 points in medicine, 3 points in occult, and 3 points in politics. Next is the advantages section, which is where the character creation process truly becomes unique. On the left plane is the disciplines, which are your blood-based mythical powers. If you are making a neonate Tal'Mahe'Ra character, it is the same as the standard V20 character creation. They start with the 3 dots to spend on your disciplines to distribute how you please. It is entirely up to you. Each clan has their own 3 disciplines, but if you choose to play as a caitiff, you can choose any 3 disciplines you wish, providing it is approved by the storyteller. A caitiff with potent celerity and fortitude could easily break the game, as those 3 disciplines work very differently as to how they work in V5. If, however, you are making an older generation true Black Hand character, the discipline point you have depends on the generation of the character. Ancilla, which are generations 8 to 10, have 7 points to spend. Elders, which are generation 8 to 6, have 10 points to spend, and Seraphim or Methuselah characters, which are generations 4 to 6, have 12 points to spend. As a Harbinger of Skull, Claude has Auspex, Necromancy, and Fortitude, and I've given him 4 points in Auspex, 3 points in Fortitude, and 5 points in Necromancy, and that particular path he is following is the Grave's Decay. After this, we move on to backgrounds. If you are making a neonate character, they may only have mentor and has to put some points into alternate identity. Remember that neonates are considered to be generation 10, and you have to assign generation to them as well. Other generations have a different amount of backgrounds to spend. Ancilla, which are generations 8 to 10, have 10 points to spend. Elder characters, which are generations 8 to 6, have 15 points to spend, while Seraphims or Methuselah characters, generations 4 to 6, they also have 15 points to spend. Like with the neonate characters, all members of the Tal'Mahe'Ra must have some points in alternate identity and Tal'Mahe'Ra status, in addition to generation. All members also have 1 dot in true Black Hand membership, which is mechanically the same as Black Hand membership but aligned with the Tal'Mahe'Ra, not the Sabbat. Whatever you choose, these should support the character's concepts. A havenless Ravnos is unlikely to have lots of cash, for example. So going back to Claude, he has 1 dot in Black Hand membership, 5 dots in alternate identity, 7 points in generation, 4 points in resources, 5 points in status for the Tal'Mahe'Ra, 2 points of domain, 5 points in contacts, and 4 points in retainers. Yes, I know that exceeds 15 points, but do remember, the Black Hand, a guide to the Tal'Mahe'Ra, gives you a lot of those for free. Following this is the Virtues section, which provides the moral backbone for characters and how readily they resist the temptations of the beast. They define how they resist frenzy, with older Cainites losing said virtues as they grow older. Conscience and conviction governs a character's sense of right and wrong. Self-control and instinct is how they maintain their composure and hunger, whilst courage determines their gumption and their ability to withstand the dangers of fire and sunlight. The Tal'Mahe'Ra was created before the Deluge, a time before the Anak Revolt, before the Convention of Thorns, and before the establishment of the Camarilla, Sabbat, and Anarchs. Vampires of this sect are not all too concerned with blending in with humans as much as a fledgling may have done, but they would be encouraged to follow a path of enlightenment. They are a systematic and philosophical effort to destroy your sense of humanity, replacing it with different sociopathic ethics rigid enough for you to exhibit an ounce of self-control. None of them allow the player to do as they please. For example, the Road of Blood, followed by many Assamites, similar to the Road of Kings, the Road of Blood is what make the Assamites known as judges of Cainites and punish the unworthy, acknowledging that some unworthy of the blood of Cain, taking great care in their decision-making, not to punish incorrectly. In short, Tal'Mahe'Ra characters do not follow the path of humanity. Whatever the path you choose, you put 1 point in each virtue and then assign 7 points however you please. Your path score equals conscience or conviction plus self-control or instinct, and your willpower is the same as your courage points. Claude is a walker of the Path of Bones, which uses the virtues conviction and self-control with a bearing of silence, which I can let you read about in your own good time. So let us have a look at conviction. What does that mean? Well, the conviction virtue quantifies a character's ability to maintain a sense of reason when faced with desire, suffering, or need. Conviction represents the reconciliation of the predatory urge of the character's capacity for atrocity, as opposed to conscience, which deals with remorse and atonement for past transgressions. A character with conviction recognizes his failure and plans to overcome it. Conviction is completely inhuman. The character who has this trait can no longer pass for human under anything but the most cursory of scrutiny. Now let's look at the other virtue, self-control. Self-control defines a character's discipline and mastery over the beast. Characters with high self-control rarely succumb to emotional urges, and are thus able to retain their darker sides more readily than characters with low self-control. But returning to Claude's virtues, we are going to give him 2 points of conviction, 2 points of self-control, and 3 points in courage, which means that he has 6 points along the Path of Bones and 4 points in willpower. We have almost finished creating your V20 Black Hand Cainite. Huzzah! The last thing that needs to be done is to spend your freebie points on whatever you want. If you want to buy an out-of-clan discipline, come up with a good reason as to why they learnt it, providing that the storyteller allows it. Each generation of Kindred gets a different amount of freebie points to spend. Neonates get 15 points, Ancilla get 18 points, Elders get 25 points, and Seraphims or Methuselahs get 35 points to spend. There are some things to keep in mind when spending your freebie points. Attribute is 5 per dot, abilities, virtues, humanity or path is 2 per dot, willpower and background is 1 per dot, and disciplines is 7 per dot. These numbers change when you spend experience after each session. A new trait costs 3 points, a new discipline costs 10, a new or existing necromancy, caldonic sorcery, or thaumaturgy path costs 7 points. A new attribute costs 4 times the current rating. To upgrade or purchase a clan discipline, it is 5 times the current rating. To upgrade or purchase an out-of-clan discipline, it is 7 times the current rating. Caitiffs have to spend 6 times the current rating to upgrade or purchase any discipline, as they are clanless, which is both a blessing and a curse. To increase a virtue, it is 2 times the current rating. To increase your humanity or path of enlightenment, it is 2 times the current rating. To increase your willpower, it is as many experience points you have in willpower to upgrade it. So, if you had 4 willpower and wanted to make it 5, you would need 4 experience points to upgrade it. There is also the option of buying merits and flaws that make your character all the more unique, each one being physical, mental, social, or supernatural. Merits grant you special advantages that make you stand out from the rest of the kindred in the Chronicle. Flaws are the exact opposite and worth adding to your character sheet. After all, no one is perfect. Each merit has its own point cost expenditure, and flaw adds a certain number of freebie points you can spend. You can purchase as many merits as you can afford, but you can't have more than 7 points of flaws. Neonate Tal'Mahe'Ra members must assign themselves the probationary sect member flaw. They do not gain any freebie points with this flaw, nor does it count towards the maximum allowable freebie points gained from flaws. But let us look at Claude's character sheet one more time, for which he has a lot of points to spend. With merits, I'm going to give him the Disciple of Lazarus, which is a unique merit found in the Law of the Bloodlines book, which I highly recommend you reading. I'm also going to give him Ambidextrous, Language, and Natural Leader. For flaws, Prey Exclusion, Deformity, Cold Breeze, and Beacon of the Unholy. As with the rest of his freebie points, for which he currently has 37, I'm going to give him 2 in Occult, 1 in Willpower, 2 in Etiquette, 1 in Expression, 3 for Subterfuge, 2 in Obfuscate, 2 in Empathy, and 1 in Alertness, which, if I have done my math correctly, should take him all the way down to 0 experience/freebie points. Finally, there is the matter of your blood pool, which is the only resource determined by the use of a D10. Roll it, and whatever it lands on is your starting blood for the first session. Once you have finished adding freebie points and rolling your D10, you can finally say that you have finished your first VTM V20 Tal'Mahe'Ra character. Yes, the books have all that you need to understand the character creation process, but I have found that it sometimes helps to have someone walk you through the process, rather than nag your storyteller 100 times. To be kept updated, follow the Law by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we will upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, and you will be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.